Hello and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Kimberley Hoeppner, and today is November 27, 2018. When we're not here, you can always get our information by dialing the 1-800 number 472-0391, or you can go to our webpage by typing in weather.gov/Alaska. Feel free to email our TV lead, Dave Snider, at david.snider@noaa.gov if you ever have any questions or need more information. Now let's go start the weather topics of the day, and we're going to first look at the Alaska range. Here highlighted is a wind advisory, and this is for the evening hours as winds are gusting between 30 to 40 miles per hour with higher gusts expected up to 55 miles per hour. Now that's expected to taper down by 9 p.m. this evening, but then we'll also take a look at the southwest where they're having some snow falling this afternoon, and that's going to continue during the overnight hours. Expect between 4 to 8 inches. And as well as Dutch Harbor, they're going to be seeing an onset of snow coming and developing after midnight. Between 4 to 8 inches will be possible for these locations through 10 a.m. tomorrow. Now, along the north coast, we're looking at some blowing snow, reducing visibilities down to 1/2 mile at times. They're only expecting another 1/2 inch of snow. However, reduced visibilities along the gusty easterly flow that's occurring up there with 30 to 45 mile per hour gusts through the overnight hours is expected. Now let's take a look at the weather systems that are bringing the conditions in our directions. Let's first focus out to the west there. You can see here along Shimia and south towards Adak is the front that we're going to be seeing move across the Dutch Harbor or Unalaska during the overnight hours. Now, already across the southwest, we have low pressure that's centered near the Kenai Peninsula. Putting this into motion, you can kind of see there's a little bit of a spin to it, but mainly a trough axis with abundant moisture that spreads up towards the interior. A main convergent zone is at the surface along the Bristol Bay area, so that's what's going to be bringing the snow tonight. And across the northern tier of the state, we're mainly looking at easterly flow with a northward push of moisture. Now across the southeast locations and the panhandle, we have a low pressure system that's moving towards the Dixon entrance. Just a really weak flow around this system, nothing major in the upper levels, but you can see the brightness temperatures on the satellite that there's a bit of moisture across the southeast and Gulf waters. Now at the surface, here's that low near the southern tip of the Kenai. A weak boundary extending from it is allowing some rain showers develop during the afternoon hours, which bring this nice warmer moist air mass across the cooler air mass at the surface along the southeast. So we're expecting some areas of fog to develop during late day and overnight hours for the southeast. Now across the interior, boundaries extending up towards the interior from the low pressure across the southern Cook Inlet. The heaviest snow is across Bristol Bay with a mix of rain and snow right along the Cook Inlet there. A little bit of a gustier component to the southeasterly flow heading in towards Prince William Sound. And across the north and west coast, that's where we're seeing the gustiest conditions with a very tight gradient with the low pressure just inland and high pressure out towards the north. Now let's take a look at the west. Here's the developing surface low near Adak and Atka. We're looking at snow just to the north of the Aleutian chain right now with rain occurring along the Adak locations and colder air pushing in on the backside of this low pressure system. Now as we head through the overnight hours, this low pressure system will be just kind of skirting across the Aleutian chain towards the Alaska Peninsula. So just bringing this very small area of snow as this low tracks on to the south. Ridging will build into the western bearing behind it. Now the low pressure across the Kenai shifts inland tonight, pretty much maintaining a broad area of low pressure across the state with one axis to the north and one extending to the south. That will be the main focal points for rain and snow to develop. The heaviest snow, as mentioned before, is going to be across the Bristol Bay location with some rain development along the East Gulf and then developing areas of fog across the southeast. Now, across the west coast, expect some gustier north flow to extend down towards the Kuskokwim Delta. However, they will be in the lighter snow showery pattern. As we head into the day on Wednesday, this low pressure across the west coast will be weakening from 987 millibars down to 994 millibars, with a new weak low developing just along the northern Cook Inlet. Now, a axis is going to be extending out towards another low pressure along the Dixon entrance, and this will bring some light rain and snow activity, with snow mainly across inland areas and rain just along the Gulf Coast. We're not expecting any major accumulations with that low pressure system. Now, this low pressure system that's going to be skirting across the Alaska Peninsula will bring some continuous snow showers across the eastern areas of the Bering and all across the west coast. Just expect ongoing snow shower activity with only light accumulations expected. A changeover from snow to rain across the Alaska Peninsula with gustier flow on the backside of the low out of the north. Now let's take a look at the western areas of the Bering. We're going to see our next focus on this front that approaches on Wednesday, pushing through just about the western Bering during the afternoon. This is going to see some fairly heavy rainfall across the frontal boundary as it moves across, with snow across the northern areas of the Bering expected. As we head into Thursday, this low is going to be 974 millibars, so deepening as it shoves this front up towards the Kuskokwim Delta. So look for gustier southeasterly flow out ahead of this system, along with snow development along the boundary, with some rain and snow across the southern areas of the Bering and central Bering as the air mass kind of moderates between two systems. The ridge will shove off to the southeast, and across the Gulf waters we'll see mainly low pressure in control up through the north coast. So lighter snow showers on Thursday for much of the inland locations across the southeast. Drier for you on that day as well, with the gustier conditions hanging on across the northwest zones. Now for temperatures for tomorrow morning, expect the coldest temperatures across the Brooks Range and north near zero, with climb-in temperatures here for the central interior in the teens, and areas along the southern portion of the state will see mainly in the low to mid 30s. Across the southwest, colder temperatures there on the backside of the low, staying into the teens, with the Bering in the range of the upper 20s to lower 30s. Now, a little bit cooler conditions will be staying into the Wednesday afternoon time frame, with possible creeping up into the 40s, ridging pushes in behind the low pressure system. Now for the state tomorrow afternoon, we're looking at the same trends, not going to be changing much diurnally. So in the single digits across the north and down towards the west coast, we'll see in the mid-20s, as well as the interior Arctic Valley being a little bit on the cooler side in the single digits to teens. For the southern interior of the state, we're expecting temperatures mainly to rise again into the mid-30s, with a little bit warmer conditions across the south in the mid-40s. Now for Thursday morning, temperatures will stay in the mid-40s for the southeast, with coastal locations in the mid to upper 30s to near 40 degrees, and cooler temperatures will continue across the interior, just in the teens, so nothing unseasonably cool about that, however. And then across the north slope and west coast locations, continuing conditions going to be in the single digits to the teens. Now for the west coast, not much change here. Temperatures from the Seward Peninsula and south are still going to be in the low to mid-20s, with those snow showers keeping things on the cool side. However, the temperatures will be warming just along the coast, with temperatures creeping up into the lower 30s, possibly Nunavak Island. That front will be across the Pribilof Islands, so there's your transition, with the temperatures going above freezing on your Thursday morning for the rest of the Bering locations. So we'll probably continue to see this push towards the southwest coast as that powerful low pressure system makes it into the mainland. So overall, expect temperatures to be near steady as we head into Thursday morning. Now in just a moment, we'll be up with your aviation forecast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Tomorrow's flying weather is looking like it's going to be widespread MVFR to IFR conditions across the state as low pressure remains in control. Look for areas of IFR along the Alcan border, along the Panhandle locations, and across much of the southwest to west coast, and a little area up there along the north slope. Look for IFR conditions across the southern parts of the Bering and also along much of the southeast. As we head towards the afternoon hours, we're seeing some improvement across the Gulf waters and parts of the southeast, and the Panhandle, the northern Panhandle begins to improve to MVFR conditions. Otherwise, widespread MVFR conditions will prevail statewide with IFR conditions there along the Alcan border, with also the western areas of the Alaska range of concern as well. During the afternoon for the Bering locations, look for some IFR conditions hanging around the Alaska Peninsula and across the western waters. As we head into Thursday, the pattern continues in the MVFR range as we have low pressure that's in control over the state. We'll see areas of IFR again on Thursday, with the southeast starting off mainly IFR towards the Dixon entrance. And then across the eastern areas of Alaska, we're looking for some spotty IFR conditions as well. For your afternoon hours, we're looking for better conditions across the eastern areas of the Gulf of Alaska. However, still staying in the MVFR range across the southeast. And then we'll also see some IFR conditions developing across the northern Cook Inlet and north. And we'll see some breaks across the west on this day, with IFR creeping back to the northwest coast and also creeping into the eastern areas of the Bering, as well as the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula. Now let's take a look at your passes in more depth. We'll first look at Anativik Pass. Let me move to the other side of the screen for you. And that's going to be MVFR. You're going to see a lot of these MVFR conditions, such as Adigan Pass. And we'll see IFR improving to MVFR for Lake Clark and Merrill Pass for Wednesday. Rainy will be IFR, and we're expecting windy to go MVFR to IFR late day. And Isabel will start off MVFR and stay that way, and we'll see the same condition at Mentasta. Looking at Tanita, MVFR for you, and IFR to MVFR for Portage, with the west entrance being MVFR during the day. We'll see Chilkoot and White Pass stay in the IFR range. Now let's take a look at the freezing levels for tomorrow, looking at a 2,000-foot level there across the eastern areas of the state, otherwise below 2,000, and still, except for the southeast where you climb back up to the 2,000 level. And then we'll see mainly the surface freezing line draped across the eastern areas of the state back towards the central areas of the Bering. Now let's take a look at your icing concerns for tomorrow. There's a front out to the west, so above 3,000 feet as it pulls into the western Aleutians. And we'll see icing concerns just along the west coast down through the Alaska Peninsula, above 2,000 feet primarily. And then we'll also see some light icing extending across the north coast. Also look for icing across the Panhandle locations, the southeast and the northern areas of the Gulf. Now the weather pattern in control, here's low pressure that's centered just across the eastern areas of the Bering. A strong jet speed just to the west of this, 160 knots entering the western areas of the Bering. So highly amplified pattern with a ridge just off to the northeast. Now let's take a look at your 9,000-foot winds, low pressure there across the Bering Strait, a little bit of a jet streak on the backside. And then across the Bering, we do have the approaching low pressure system and one low over the Akpen for Wednesday. Now across the eastern areas of the state, we'll have a weakening low pressure near the Dixon entrance and a weak ridge just over the Gulf of Alaska. Lighter winds inland will be reflected also at the 3,000-foot level, with primarily an onshore flow component, a little bit more easterly as you head up towards the Brooks Range. Strong flow just off the coast at 45 knots. Now across the Gulf areas, looking at a westerly flow becoming more northerly as you get towards the Dixon entrance, and then across the Bering, look for lots of changes of direction around the winds out to the west with higher speed maxes at the 3,000-foot level. Looking at wind concerns for turbulence across the west coast, higher concerns across the Alaska Peninsula and out towards the Aleutians, and looking across the Gulf and the southeast, fairly quiet in the wind department there.
On March 11, 2011, a powerful tsunami hit Japan, destroying cities and villages. As the water receded back into the ocean, it pulled what remained of buildings, cars, boats, and homes along with it. Scrap metals, plastics, and objects of all shapes and sizes either sank near the shore or floated away. In the days that followed, large masses of floating debris could easily be seen by satellite imagery and aerial photos. In the wake of this disaster, NOAA is assessing the potential impact that the debris may have on U.S. shores. So, where will this debris go, and when will it get there? To help answer those questions, scientists are using computer models to estimate the debris' path, using its starting location in the tsunami zone and historical weather and ocean conditions. The findings are that some debris could pass near or wash ashore in the northwestern Hawaiian Islands as early as this winter. Debris may also approach the west coast of the United States in 2013 and potentially circle back to the main Hawaiian Islands in 2014. But scientists caution that there are limitations to what computer models can tell us. Now that the debris has moved out of satellite view, and with currents and winds in the Pacific constantly changing, there is no guarantee that the debris will stay on the predicted path. Items will sink along the way, or break up and disperse in many directions. Despite these unknowns, NOAA and its partners are collecting data, assessing possible impacts, and making preparations in case debris does wash ashore. The 2011 tsunami in Japan reminds us that the devastation that happens on land can also become a marine debris issue at sea.
Imagine all of this underwater. In a major tsunami, it could happen. In this part of Washington state, it's happened before, hundreds of years ago. Sometime in the future, it will likely happen again. But we can be ready. If a tsunami strikes, this school will provide a place for people to ride it out above the waves.
We're in Westport, Washington, and right behind me is the very first tsunami vertical evacuation center in the United States.
This is an emergency. Please walk to the nearest exit. Go to the stair tower and proceed up the stairs.
Tsunamis are a potential hazard for low-lying coastal areas. That's why many coastal communities have plans in place to get people to safety, high ground or inland, where they can be beyond the reach of a tsunami. Often there are signs showing where to go and where to gather. Most tsunamis are caused by underwater earthquakes along subduction zones, where two of Earth's plates collide and one is forced under the other. Westport and other Pacific Northwest coastal communities are especially at risk because one of these zones lies just offshore. It's called the Cascadia Subduction Zone. An earthquake here caused a tsunami in 1700 that flooded shores as far away as Japan. Experts say it's just a matter of time before it happens again. Since the subduction zone is so close, a tsunami like the one in 1700 could strike before people in some low-lying areas could get to high ground or inland. And Westport doesn't have a lot of high ground or easy routes inland.
If we get an earthquake or a tsunami, we're going to get a lot of water in the area really quickly, and we needed a place to go. So our community built this brand new school, and above our gym and cafeteria, we have a roof. And so the idea is that we'll get all of our students up, and anybody from the community who needs to get up, they can get up there as well.
Ocosta Elementary School might seem like a normal school, but look more closely. It's engineered to withstand monster waves. Tsunami vertical evacuation shelters must be able to resist the powerful forces that a tsunami brings. Hydrodynamic, buoyant, hydrostatic, and debris impact forces and strong currents. They're also designed to help people get to safety quickly.
There are 4 big staircases on each corner of the building, and each one of those staircases is 8 feet wide, and we can get the whole school evacuated in about 4.5 minutes.
Everybody should be at a 0.
On the roof of the building, there is water and food and buckets and shelters and tarps and blankets and different things so that we can be up there for 2, 3, maybe 4 days while we wait for rescue.
You can go to the top and you know you'll be safe. It feels really nice to have a special building because you feel protected.
This community decided that a tsunami evacuation center was important because they didn't have anywhere to go, and they decided to use their money to build the building. The additional cost is anywhere between 10 and 20% of the actual building cost itself, and that's really a sound investment for a lot of protection. You may be there a while, but you're safe and you're secure, and that's the most important thing.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Now on to the marine segment of the show. We're going to take a look at the sea ice edge. We're seeing the sea ice expanding down towards the Bering Strait. We're going to see those northerly cold winds coming and bringing that ice edge further to the south. And then we have the development, of course, across all of the west coast. We should see a continuation of growth as we head through the next few days. Now let's take a look at the southeast. The coastal marines out there are going to see varying winds from the south and from the north direction with low pressure just sitting to the south. So mainland or small craft there with seas across the inner channels at 2 feet, and outer waters will see 10-foot seas. We'll head into Thursday, see a little bit stronger, more of a northerly flow across the area with the low exiting, and seas on the inner channels 2 to 4 feet with the outer waters between 7 to 10 feet once again. And now looking at your Wednesday forecast for the northern Gulf, we'll see more of a west to southwesterly flow into Prince William Sound and across the Cook Inlet. There we're going to see a little bit stronger winds, small craft advisory along the southern tip of the Kenai out of the west direction, becoming more southwesterly up the inlet, and 20 knots across the northern inlet. Seas across the Prince William Sound and northern inlet will be between 2 to 5 feet, and then about 8 to 10 feet across the northern Gulf and around around the southern tip of Kenai. Now looking at your Thursday forecast, lighter speeds on this day, varying wind direction with seas between 2 to 6 feet on average. Looking at the southwest coast locations around the the Alaska Peninsula, stronger flow on your Wednesday with primarily a northerly flow across the peninsula, becoming more of a southeasterly towards Kodiak Island, and with another change of direction there across the island, all in the small craft to gale warning criteria, with higher seas between 6 to 10 feet across the Alaska Peninsula locations, as well as Shelikof Strait and south of Kodiak Island. Heading into your Thursday forecast, speeds will maintain strength across the western areas of the Kenai, looking at a southerly 30-knot flow. Otherwise, small craft around the peninsula and Bristol Bay. A little bit more of a northerly flow as you get closer to Kodiak Island, with small craft there just along the southeastern areas of the Alaska Peninsula. Look at the sea heights. We'll see some higher heights on this day across the Alaska Peninsula, between 12 to 18 feet. Across the Bristol Bay area, 6 feet, and 3 to 8 feet near Kodiak Island. Looking at your western Aleutian forecast, we're going to see the strongest winds out in that direction, 45 knots, all gale force just to the west there. And then we'll see across the central Aleutians a little bit drop in speeds, more of a southerly direction becoming northerly as you head towards the east. And we'll see very gusty wind conditions on the backside of that low pressure system out of the north direction. And seas on this day are going to be between 10 to 20 feet, highest seas out there towards the west. Looking at your Thursday forecast, we're going to see stronger southwesterly flow across much of the area with a little bit weaker flow than the previous day across the eastern Aleutians. However, still quite gusty, and seas are going to be between 10 and 20 feet once again, especially around that low pressure near the eastern Aleutians. Looking at your Wednesday forecast for the west coast, let me step out of your way here. Primarily a northerly wind between 20 to 30 knots, higher gusts possible along the west coast, and seas will be between 4 to 12 feet. Looking at your Thursday forecast, a little bit more of a directional wind change with gale strength winds coming up from low pressure moving in, and we're going to see seas on this day between 7 to 14 feet, a little bit higher seas to 20 feet across the Pribilof Island area. For the north and west coast, looking at northerly winds gusting, small craft advisory for the area, with freezing spray issues, of course, down through the Bering Strait. And then on your Thursday forecast, look for a change of wind direction just along the Seward Peninsula there between 20 and 30 knots, small craft. Sub gales there across the northwest coast, and a change of wind direction out of the east direction across the North Slope locations. Looking at a recap for your weather, we're going to hang on to snowy conditions across much of the west with light rain across the southeast overnight, with this next low pressure moving to the eastern Aleutians and bring some more snow chances mainly to the southern mainland as we head into.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.